Hey everyone, this is the walkthrough to sum all numbers in a range. So let's get started. We have an array of two numbers and we want the sum of those two and every number in between it. So it's basically the sum of an inclusive range. So the first order of business is to set up some sort of iteration to grab every single number and add them all together. So that's pretty easy. First, we narrow this return statement for now. We basically want to start with the minimum and the maximum. In the base case, it's implied that the minimum is at the beginning and the max is at the end. So we're going to start with that. We basically can make a for loop. And we're going to set the beginning of this loop to the smallest number. So in our first case, it's at the beginning. Array of index 0 is our first number. Right here, it's the number 1. We want to keep going until it's greater or equal to the larger number, in this case, index 1. And the reason we want an equal sign, less than or equals, instead of just a less than, is because this is inclusive. We also want to loop when we're at this max number, not just skip it once we hit the max number. So then we increment I, and at this point we want to add this all to a variable that will keep track of how many numbers we've added. So let's actually declare that up here first. And I'm just going to call it total, and it's going to be equal to 0 because we haven't added anything yet. So now for each pass of this loop, we want to add the current value to our total. So we just add total plus equals I. And looks like I made a typo there. Very good. So we start at the minimum, we go into the max, and we add each number in between, incremented by this I. So if we run this right here, we will need to return something, of course, otherwise we are returning undefined. So let's return our total. And now if we run this, we get our output of 10, which is right here. But there's another case as well, which is that sometimes the minimum is not always at the beginning. Sometimes the minimum is at the end. And how we have it set up right now is if the maximum, if the greater number is at array index 0, that will already be greater than array index 1, which is the smaller number, and it will just break the loop and it will return nothing. And you can see that here if I make this 10, that's greater than 4, so when I run this, it's going to return 0, because we declared total here as the value of 0, and we just returned total. So we want to set up something to always find where the minimum is and where the maximum is. And that's what this array, that's what this math.max and math.min is for. That can take any number of arguments and return the maximum or the minimum respectively. So we're going to create two variables here. They're going to be our max and our minimum. The max will be equal to math.max of our two arguments. Our first argument being array index 0 and array index 1. Since in our spec we're always past two numbers, we don't have to worry about any other circumstances. If you're a little more advanced and know the apply method, you could also apply the entire array to it. But I'm just going to explicitly state these two variables here because we know it will only be two as per our spec sheet here. So now we got math.min for our minimum. Same thing there as well. So regardless of where the minimum or the maximum is, it will automatically be arranged in its respective variables. So then finally we have to change here. In our loop, we want these variables to take the place. Not mix. I don't know what mix would be, but it's not helpful for this. So now we will always start at the minimum regardless of where it is in the array, and we will always go until the maximum regardless of where it is in the array. And if we run it, we should do it, as said here. If anything didn't make sense in that, please leave me a note in the comment, and I would love to explain it further. That was my first ever recording. Oh man.